Every space, from quiet offices to busy restaurants, from data centers to warehouse storage, carries its own level of fire risk, and that risk shapes how the sprinkler system must be engineered. Hazard classification isn't just a formality. It defines head spacing, pipe sizing, system type, and how much water needs to flow when seconds count. Get it right, and the system performs exactly as it should. Get it wrong, and lives, property, and compliance are all at risk. This is why everything starts here, with hazard occupancy. In this video, we will go over classifications and what type if areas shall be as follows. Light hazard. Ordinary hazard, Group 1 and 2. Extra hazard, Group 1 and 2. There are commodities that make up types of storage, but that is for another time. In this chart that can be found in NFPA 13/2019 edition, shows how many square feet each system is allowed to cover pure hazard. Light hazard occupancies. Occupancies or portions of other occupancies where the quantity and/or combustibility of contents is low, and fires with relatively low rates of heat release are expected. Open grid ceilings. The term open grid ceilings, as defined in this standard, refers to ceilings with openings that are 1/4 inch, 6 millimeters, or larger in their smallest dimension. The thickness of the ceiling material must not exceed the smallest dimension of the openings, and at least 70% of the ceiling area must be comprised of these openings. Light hazard occupancies encompass uses and conditions that are similar to the following: animal shelters, churches, clubs, eaves and overhangs, if of combustible construction with no combustibles beneath. Educational, hospitals, including animal hospitals and veterinary facilities. Institutional, kennels, libraries, except large stack rooms, museums, nursing or convalescent homes. Offices, including data processing, residential, restaurant seating areas. Theaters and auditoriums, excluding stages and prosceniums. Unused attics. When a light hazard occupancy, such as a school, contains separate ordinary hazard storage rooms no more than 400 square feet, the hose stream demand would be that required for a light hazard occupancy. Non-metallic pipe listed for light hazard occupancies shall be permitted to be installed in ordinary hazard rooms. Of otherwise light hazard occupancies where the room does not exceed 400 square feet. 8.8.5.2.2.1. In light hazard occupancies, privacy curtains shall not be considered obstructions where all of the following are met. 1. The curtains are supported by fabric mesh on ceiling track. 2. Openings in the mesh are equal to 70% or greater. The mesh extends a minimum of 22 inches, 550 millimeters, down from ceiling. Concealed space design requirements. Sprinklers in concealed spaces having no access for storage or other use shall be installed in accordance with the requirements for light hazard occupancy. Now let us move on to ordinary hazards. Ordinary hazard, unlike light hazard, is divided into two subgroups. Ordinary hazard group 1, OH1, and ordinary hazard group 2, OH2. There was previously a group 3, but in 1991, NFPA 13 revised the classification to include only two subgroups. Let's start with ordinary hazard group. One other known as OH1, ordinary hazard group 1. Occupancies or portions of other occupancies where the quantity and combustibility of the contents does not exceed the amount of miscellaneous storage of class 2, 3, 4, plastics, tires, and roll paper. Ordinary hazard, group 1. Occupancies shall be defined as occupancies or portions of other occupancies where combustibility is low. Quantity of combustibles is moderate, stockpiles of combustibles do not exceed 8 feet, and fires with moderate rates of heat release are expected. 5.3.1. Ordinary hazard, group 1. Occupancies include occupancies having uses and conditions similar to the following: automobile parking and showrooms, bakeries, beverage manufacturing, canneries, dairy products manufacturing and processing, electronic plants, glass and glass products manufacturing, laundries, restaurant service areas, porte cochères, mechanical rooms. Let's move on with ordinary hazard group. Two other known as OH2. Ordinary hazard group 2. Occupancies or portions of other occupancies where the quantity and combustibility of the contents moderate to high. Stockpiles of contents with moderate rates of heat release do not exceed 12 feet, and stockpiles of contents with high rates of heat release do not exceed 8 feet. Ordinary hazard. Group 2. Occupancies include occupancies having uses and conditions similar to the following: agricultural facilities, barns and stables, cereal mills, chemical plants, ordinary, confectionery products, distilleries, dry cleaners, exterior loading docks. Note that exterior loading docks only used for loading and unloading of ordinary combustibles should be classified as OH2. For the handling of flammable and combustible liquids, hazardous materials, or were utilized for storage, exterior loading docks and all interior loading docks should be protected based upon the actual occupancy and the materials handled on the dock, as if the materials were actually stored in that configuration. Feed mills, horse stables, leather goods manufacturing, libraries, large stack room areas, machine shops, metalworking, mercantile, paper and pulp mills, paper process plants, piers and wharves. Let us move on to extra hazards areas. Extra hazard occupancies are categorized as the most severe fire conditions within the occupancy hazard classifications outlined in NFPA 13. These types of occupancies pose significant challenges for sprinkler protection. The classification of extra hazard occupancies is based on real-world experiences with sprinkler system performance in environments exhibiting conditions similar to those specified. Here are some of the types that is an extra hazard. Group 1, aircraft hangars, except as governed by NFPA 409. Combustible hydraulic fluid use areas. Die Gießen, metal extruding, plywood and particle board manufacturing. Printing, using inks having flash points below 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Rubber reclaiming, compounding, drying, milling, vulcanizing. Sawmills, textile picking, opening, blending, garneting, or carding, combining of cotton, synthetics, wool shoddy, or burlap. Upholstering with plastic foams. 8.2.3. Where single systems protect extra hazard, high-piled storage, or storage covered by other NFPA standards, and ordinary or light hazard areas, the extra hazard or storage area coverage shall not exceed the floor area specified for that hazard, and the total area coverage shall not exceed 52,000 square feet. High-temperature sprinklers shall be permitted to be used throughout ordinary and extra hazard occupancies, storage occupancies, and as allowed in this standard and other NFPA codes and standards. Quick response sprinklers shall not be permitted for use in extra hazard occupancies. Now we have a grasp what extra hazard group 1 is. Let's move on to group 2. The following shall be protected with EH. 1 occupancy criteria in this standard: spaces with very high quantity and combustibility of contents. Spaces with substantial amounts of combustible or flammable liquids. Spaces where shielding of combustibles is extensive. Extra hazard, group 2. Occupancies shall be defined as occupancies or portions of other occupancies with moderate to substantial amounts of flammable or combustible liquids, or occupancies where shielding of combustibles is extensive. Let's move on with ordinary hazard group 2, other known as OH2. Ordinary hazard group 2. Occupancies or portions of other occupancies where the quantity and combustibility of the contents moderate to high. Stockpiles of contents with moderate rates of heat release do not exceed 12 feet, and stockpiles of contents with high rates of heat release do not exceed 8 feet. Extra hazard, group 2. Occupancies include occupancies having uses and conditions similar to the following: asphalt saturating, flammable liquids spraying, flow coating, manufactured home or modular building assemblies, where finished enclosure is present and has combustible interiors, open oil quenching, plastics manufacturing, solvent cleaning, varnish and paint dipping, car stackers and car lift systems with 2 cars stacked vertically,